Our first guest is Yehuda Avner, former ambassador to the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia, and the author of the just published The Prime Ministers. A look back at his career and personal reminiscences working closely with 4 of Israel's prime ministers. Ambassador Avner, thank you for joining us. I must tell you how much I've enjoyed reading your book. Most people look at a history book as a dry collection of facts, and yours is the most interesting, engaging history book I've ever read. Kol hakavod.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you first, you came to Israel in 1947, is that correct, from Manchester? So you've been here through the entire history of the state. First tell us the night of Yom Ha'atzmaut, the first Independence Day. Where were you? You were on the western part of Jerusalem, is that correct?
That is so. I came here as a student initially, and on May 14th, 1947, it was a Friday night, Erev Shabbat, and we were located on what is now, I would think, where Yad Vashem is, overlooking Ein Karem, and we were a group of 20, 30 hackers building fortifications. The rumor was that there was going to be an attack on Jerusalem from the west, and we had absolutely no communication, no information, no intelligence. We had no idea what was going on.
Kids today don't understand when you don't have a cell phone and to be able to talk to everybody in the world. You can talk to nobody.
And our commander, a fellow called Elisha Linder, he's no longer with us. He asked one of our crowd to try and make his way into town and bring back some solid information.
Wasn't that a dangerous assignment?
It was pretty dangerous because, you're talking about just beyond Beit Vegan in Jerusalem, to those of our listeners, viewers who know what Beit Vegan is. But to get from there into town in those days was pretty hazardous. And off he went, and everything in the vacuum of knowledge filled with rumors, and the rumors was the British haven't left, and that Ben Gurion was not going to declare a state, and that the Arab armies were already invading, which actually they were by that time. Eventually he came back just before midnight, and he said, Yesh li chadashot, I have news. What's the news? The British have left. Ben Gurion has declared the state, and the state is coming into being at midnight. And one or two of us had a watch, and we looked and we saw midnight was a couple of minutes away. So somebody called out, what's the name of our new state? And he looked at us, he said, I didn't think to ask. So, what do you mean you didn't think to ask? So somebody said, oh, it's going to be called Zion. Obviously, Zion. Another said, Yehuda, David's kingdom was Yehuda. And then said, maybe Israel. And our commander, Elisha, he said, let's drink a l'chaim with whatever the name of the state is, because a fellow brought back a bottle of wine from town. They were handing out bottles of wine in town. And Elisha filled up this mug to the brim, and as he was about to raise it, a fellow, a beard, a payas, was called Reb Nosson de Chazan. He came from Meir Sharim. In those days he volunteered for the army from Meir Sharim. He said, wait, it's Shabbat, let's make Kiddush first. And that is a Kiddush I will never forget. I choke up now when I think of how he rose up on his toes. When he came to the end of the Kiddush, Kadesh HaShabbat, he declared, Baruch Atah Hashem, Shechiyanu B'kimanu, and there wasn't a dry eye among us. But then there were a few shots that were fired from Ein Karem. We scrambled for the trenches, but that was my first Yom Ha'atzmaut.
I can only imagine what that must have been like, the emotional moment. Were you scared?
I don't know. This is 30 years ago. I'm an honest guy. I know I was swept up in that very moment, because the fact is, in my book, that is one thing that called to mind that of that Friday, that Erev Shabbat, Independence Day.
You've lived here the entire 62-year history of Israel. In your opinion, what is the greatest accomplishment in Israel in the 62 years?
I think that the notion of kibbutz galuyot, the ingathering of the exiles, is a historic phenomenon without precedent, of almost biblical proportions. When I came, There were 600,000 Jews in the country. And then we were 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million. And you don't muck around with 6 million Jews anymore.
And what would you like your legacy to be, people in the future looking back? Your accomplishments as you worked with these prime ministers, what are you proudest of having done?
Well, you're speaking to the proverbial fly on the wall when they're talking about personal accomplishments. It's their story more than it is mine.
And you tell it quite well.
And I think their personal, thank you, but I think their personal accomplishment is, to me, it's almost a miraculous dimension again, is that despite all these decades of threat and war and pressure and boycott and siege, we have retained and maintained not only our independence, but our democratic freedoms. And I think that's unprecedented. If you look at the first 50 years of the last century, which were years of utter catastrophe, beginning with pogroms and ending with crematoria, and then you look at the next 50 years, and those are years of historic rescue, we have good reason on this Independence Day, when the flag goes up, to stand tall.
Ambassador Avner, I could not have said it better myself. Thank you so much for being our guest tonight on Close Up.